All right, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully the echo is gone now. But yeah, gonna be playing story mode all levels, 100 levels, 10 per world. I'm joined here with my buddy A-List, one of my favorite players, one of the best players ever, so should be exciting. So we can go ahead and count it down and get into it here as soon as we're ready. And that's gonna be, you wanna count me down, A-List?
Yeah, sure, sounds good. On go. Three, two, one, go.
All right. So I would say probably the main through line between Monkey Ball 1 and this game are the pause strats that you saw Helix going for in that run just a minute ago. Um, and the big thing about Monkey Ball 2 is that the levels in general are longer, which means the pause strats a lot of the time end up being really long and really flashy compared to some of the stuff in Monkey Ball 1. You end up seeing some really crazy stuff, and I'll kind of... there's some really crazy stuff, but beginning of World 1, pretty tame for the most part. It's mostly just going from point A to point B. There's no, crazy, ridiculous skips. Ooh, this bumpy's really fast. And I... Whoopsie. But one thing that you'll notice, the difference between this category and challenge mode categories, like we just saw Helix play, is the presence of menuing. And what the menuing allows you to do is instantly retry when you enter a stage, which is a little faster than just waiting for it to load in. And also, when you go through the goal on a stage, you'll see me menu to the stage select, which is faster than, again, waiting for the cutscene to play out for you beating the level. So you got to be quick with the retry when you enter a level, and then quick with the stage select when you're coming out of one.
Hopefully we don't see, a legendary first frame in this run, but basically you actually have to wait a few frames after you rip the gold taper when you finish the stage, because the game just doesn't count the stage as being beaten, even though you have beaten the stage. So even though it's a 2-frame window to where you can have that happen, it's just named, first frame. But those are always kind of funny because you're like, what? I just beat the stage. And you go back to the, world select screen and you'll see that you didn't. So just wanted to point that out in case we see it.
Yeah, you'll see and hear the gold tape get broken, but the stage doesn't actually count as completed. So a lot of the time, this 100-level run can end up feeling like 101 or 102.
Yeah.
End of World 1 here has some really finicky pause strats. On spinning top here, should be good. Yep. And then curve bridge is, probably the hallmark pause strat in the entire run. It's very difficult, so I'm going to focus up here. It's 7 or 8 frames, depending on what branch you end up on.
Fun little fact about this pause strat, it was actually kind of made out of spite. Because the person who made it was like, no way these guys are going to actually go for a 7-frame pause strat. If we make one viable for the time save, but we got runners like Glock who were good enough to pause it and good enough to make it save time. So shout out to the hardest one being done.
Yeah, that is definitely the hardest pause strat in the run. Even with the amount of backups and the amount of, windows there are on certain multiple frames will work. You just have to memorize the amount of memory you have to have, and obviously the execution element is very, very difficult. There's a number of pause strats that are really difficult, but that is probably numero uno. The other thing you just heard A-List mention is that you have to pause, but also pause in such a way where you can make it save time. And that's because obviously the timer keeps running even when I'm in the pause menu, right? So the finishing time on the stage, like here on Hoppers, you'll see my finishing time is a 55:50. That's not all that matters. You also need to pause quickly, so not only hitting your frame, but also hitting your frame as fast as possible is really important. And that actually you just saw on Coaster, something I wanted to talk about, is the Instapause, which is a relatively recent development in the speedrunning of this game. And basically what it is on certain stages, there are windows of frames that'll work. Let's say, 63, 61, and 60 all work. So you'll just do an instant pause and unpause, hoping to hit one of those 3 and then react to which one you get and play the stage accordingly. So you'll see a bunch of insta-pausing throughout the run, and basically that allows us to get all of the consistency and speed of a pause strat without actually having to spend a million years looking for a certain frame. So you'll see that sprinkled throughout the run. I think the next time you'll see it is on reversible gear in World 3.
Yeah, that was one of the first instances of it being introduced because it's such a large window. Usually for pause frames, there are, if it is going to be, and instead it's only like, 2 or 3, and that's kind of where we're getting to in the speedrun right now. But that one is, like a 6-frame window. It's really big, so there's a lot of frames that can be used. So that was, one of the first instances. And then as we were trying to find more and more time save throughout the run, as you run out of options, you just kind of look at pause strats and you're like, well, how can I pause this a little quicker?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then even stuff like this, totalitarianism, is just a pause strat that we don't even pause on. That's a 2-frame window, but I've just done it about 1 trillion times, so I trust myself to hit it pauseless, and I get it there.
Yeah, it's really impressive. There was a span of time where that was kind of thought as an option, but it was too hard, so we decided not to do it. So shout outs to Glock again, being such a good runner, being able to pull off the next generation of strats.
All right, getting into World 3 here. A lot of movement strats in World 3. There's actually not much super flashy pausing. Like I said, there's the insta-pause you'll see on the next stage. Reverse. Oh, my goodness. Just ran straight into a wall. Kind of in no man's land here. And then there's a pause strat you'll see on 3-4 as well. But outside of those, World 3 is mostly just kind of like World 1, moving from point A to point B. It doesn't mean it's all easy, but nothing too incredibly flashy in here. So there's the insta-pause. I hit 66, which is really hard to make work, but you got it. So that's nice. You're looking for anywhere between 63 and 56 usually, but you can make it work if you go early or late. Again, it just takes a lot of practice and memory and execution. So that really is what a lot of the pause strats come down to in this category. And then here on dribbles is also kind of a fan favorite pause strat, right? Just one where you're basically skipping an entire level that would normally be really, really long. Just
the evolution of the dribbles pause strat is really cool because originally there was a strat that would get a 49, and then there became an optimization of that pause strat to where you could just dunk straight in and get a 52. And then there was one where you could get a 53 IGT, and he wasn't able to perform it there, but there is a set of pause strats that let you get a 54 on that stage. So that's one of the few where there's been like a long evolution of optimizations on pause strats, which is really cool. Because there are ones, for example, you'll see later in World 7, there's some that have just been around for like 10 years, and there just isn't a faster one. Because, there's just, they just got right to the chase immediately.
Yeah, it's like we just kind of, the people who found it, 10 plus years ago just almost got lucky. They solved it, right?
Yeah.
10 years later, here we are. We still can't improve on that. You'll definitely, Flock in World 7 is a great example of that. One other thing I kind of wanted to mention early in the run, before we get into some of the really, really hard stuff, because World 4 is when this run really starts getting difficult on a level-to-level basis. I'm going to be going for every single strat. I'm using world record level strats. That means I'll probably end up dying a lot, especially on harder stuff, but I want this run to be as flashy and interesting as possible, right? So I'm not playing safe anywhere. If you see me playing safe, it means I made a mistake. I'm going to be basically going for everything. Again, I might die a lot, but it should result in some pretty cool stuff. World 4, you'll start to see some of the crazier pure movement strats, because pausing a lot of the time, as hard as the pause strats are, those can be the easy ones a lot of the time. The really precise movement stuff is harder than the really hard pause stuff, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I feel like, that's a general consensus among runners. Pause strats are kind of just a different category you put into as far as difficulty. But when you're really concerned about the true difficulty of certain strats, usually it's just pauseless movement. And we'll point out the specifically hard ones of those two when they come up.
Definitely. This is one of them right here, Beehive. Funny enough, me and A-List, I would probably argue, are the two best at this Beehive strat. A-List actually found it, or at least popularized it. And I've put hours and hours and hours of practice into it. So if you asked us, we'd be like, oh yeah, it's just Beehive. But if you ask 99% of Monkey Ball players, they'd be like, how do you do that strat consistently? It's so difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my opinion, the hardest stretch of this entire run of just a span of a few stages is right after triangles here. Launchers, randomizer, coin slots, seesaw bridges, arthropod is a 5-stage stretch that can hang with the best of them. It's insanely hard to do all 5 of these stages without making any mistakes. So let's see how clean we can keep it. Launchers, we're just looking to sneak right in here and get right in that green goal. Wow, that was a bit of a robbery, I'll be honest. I don't think I deserve to die there.
That was a robbery.
But we cleaned it up. That was a much worse attempt, but it got in. So, you know, sometimes the game is just cruel. That was definitely not as good of an attempt, but it got there. Randomizer, we're looking for a really precise boost at the start to get that little speed bump off the end of the starting platform, and that allows the rest of it to just kind of play itself like a jigsaw puzzle. I messed up, but it's not a death. You know, we just gotta take the scenic route, if you will.
That was actually a neat save. A lot of the times, if you end up, going backwards and hitting that goalpost, you're just out of there. So,
Coin slots again. Super precise timing, super precise clip off that corner. We end up sneaking right into the goal. And seesaw bridges, this is maybe the second hardest pause strat in the run after curb bridge. This is a pause strat that almost nobody actually goes for in real runs. It only became really viable for runs recently. And I'm one of the first people to start really picking it up and doing it at a record level. So, nice. I get all the frames now. You just have to not mess up the ending. The ending is not trivial here by any means. We should be good. There we go. Nice.
Very nice.
And then close it out here with Arthropod. I know, this is the casual Slayer, right? It's just one of the hardest levels in the game, especially for people who are playing this game as kids, but hopefully get a little bit of pleasure out of just watching it get destroyed. I accidentally exit game there. Obviously, you notice the exit game button is right below the stage select button, so a lot of time you can press it on accident, but luckily you can just menu again right after, so it only loses like 4 to maybe 5 seconds each time you do it. It sucks when you're doing it in a record run, because it's such a silly mistake, but in a marathon setting, it's pretty inconsequential, thankfully. I think this backup works. Oh, no, it doesn't. That was testing my knowledge of super deep backups, and I did not pass the test. Let's see if we can get it this time. Oh, I messed it up again! I'm looking to hit 30 at the start here. Hitting 28 kind of sets some dastardly things in motion, but we got it this time. Just a couple hiccups here on Wormhole, no big deal. You can also just try and make that clip happen without using any pausing, which would be faster, but anybody who's tried to do Wormhole pauseless knows that it's far from consistent, so we do use a couple frames there to make it so. I would say World 5 is probably the easiest stretch of run, which is nice because it's right in the middle and it's right after World 4, which is, in my opinion, the hardest section. So it almost feels like a bit of a break in the middle of the run for World 5. Most of these levels are pretty easy. That said, the next level, actually, Bead Screen, used to be really easy, but the progression of strats on it, now we're at a point where it's really, really hard to do the fastest thing possible. So we'll see if I'm able to get it here. Use an insta-pause there just for kind of visual recognition, and we actually get it, which is sweet. That's a weird use of insta-pausing, where it's not like we're doing anything frame perfect. It's mostly just used for a timing cue, where if I hit 15 there, like I did in this run, I play the ending a little differently than if I get 20, let's say, right? So it's not a super precise, frame perfect thing like we've seen on other stages, but it is still useful to know the exact timing at which you're starting your movement. It's a really tricky one.
This is Zigzag Slope. It was one of the few stages where there really is kind of several seconds of variations that you can have movement wise, because a lot of the time when you're doing like a straightforward strat in Monkey Ball or doing a pause strat, like you have a very clear idea of what you're going for, and it's kind of binary. It's like I either get the strat or I don't. But that's one of the few stages that's kind of still left to runner optimization, as far as you can get clips, which allows you to get into the air, aka not getting friction on the ground, which lets you build up more speed. And if you don't really get any clips, you know, you can get anywhere you know, from like a really high 43 to a low 44. But if you get a good, you know, zigzag slope, you can get like a low or even maybe a mid at 46. So having 2 seconds of time save there, variable just depending on, you know, your movement, is super big at this point of the run's optimization. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, definitely. Seesaw bridges used to be really similar before the pause strat came to be, where it was basically just how good are you a lot of the time? How good is your movement? How good are you at getting these super precise clips? So the people who were amazing at seesaw bridges and zigzag slope, between those two, you were saving, you know, 4 seconds a lot of the time over people who were not as good at those two stages, which is just kind of funny. Just very, very slight optimizations that can make big differences in the long run, because this run is, the record for this run is pretty insanely optimized. I mean, in the 100 levels of the run, the current world record, which is actually a tied world record between myself and one other player, it basically has the time loss equivalent of 1.5 deaths in 100 levels. So those little optimizations can make huge differences.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, a few years ago, I mean, some of best weren't even below what the current world record is. It's been crazy just to see the progression of this run, you know, because there's been points, at least I've been playing this game for, you know, a little over 5 years, and there's been points where I feel like, you know, I've seen it all. I'm like, okay, we've optimized everything, you know what I mean? Like, obviously not, because there's a really cool IL community who does really fast individual levels, so we know faster strats. But as far as getting consistent RTA viable strats, it was like, man, we've done it. Like, this is kind of the cream of the crop. And the community just continues to optimize to a level that's, you know, just crazy. Quite honestly, it's crazy.
Yeah, just little things that people used to think, if you do that in a run, you're crazy, and now are just kind of commonplace for the really top level run, is actually that just a couple stages ago, tiers, there's kind of 5 wires that you can take, each one a little bit thinner than the one below it. And that used to be a stage where if you even thought about doing the first 2 wires on tiers, you're out of your mind, because they were so hard to do consistently fast. But now pretty much anybody playing this category for record is always doing the second wire, and it is much, much harder than it looks. I'm lucky, or not lucky, but I'm thankful that I was able to get first try super clean on tiers. That is one of the hardest levels in the run, despite it might just look like we're balancing on a wire.
Yeah, it is insanely difficult. That is definitely one of the, you know, worry points when you're coming up to the level. You're like, oh my goodness, can I please get past this stage?
Yep. And it's especially like, I mean, even people who've only played this game casually know that those thin wires become about 100 times harder when you're doing them and you're sweaty and your hands are shaking and you're trembling, right? So imagine you're, you know, 54 levels deep in a deathless world record attempt, and now you have to do this teeny tiny wire, and if you don't get it, then your run is severely hampered. It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Spiral Bridge, one of the tightest movement strats in the run, actually requires you to get this cycle. Honestly, I made it look pretty easy there, but that is not an easy cycle to catch.
That's usually a benchmark for a pretty, I don't want to say top tier, but it's kind of one of those, you know, hallmarks that you're able to kind of put on your vest proudly, being like, I can get Spiral Bridge first cycle. That's definitely when you get that. That's like, okay, I'm with the crew. Like, I'm getting to a point where my movement's really good. That's definitely kind of a benchmark. A lot of mid-level runners kind of strive to get into that higher echelon for sure.
Yeah, I remember when I first learned how to do it when I was getting good. It was like I wore it like a Boy Scout badge. Like, yeah. I can get this. I can do this.
Yeah.
We got a sequence of really flashy strats coming up here. The end of World 7, it's really hard, but all these stages are really pretty, in my opinion, starting here with Civ, in which we use a pause strat to clip right over this middle gap. Pretty cool. And then, we hyped it up really early in the run. Alis was talking about how some stages, the strat that we found 10 years ago is just still the right one, and this is that flock here. We just want to pause on 61. You can look at a speedrun of this game from literally almost a decade ago, and they'll do this exact same strat, and it'll be exactly as fast, and it's still what we do. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are very few of those left. Most of them probably residing in World 1. So, yeah, that is always neat to see history kind of being preserved in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Another pretty scary pause strat here, but we nailed it. And now, kind of a sneaky triple threat here at the end of World 7. None of these stages individually are, insanely hard, in my opinion, but a lot of the time, one of them just won't quite cooperate with you here. On Hierarchy, we have some really precise falling. And then 8 bracelets. I could probably sit here for the rest of this run and explain all the different moving parts and facets of this strat. It's so weird, and probably the hardest strat in the game to learn, in my opinion. But executing it, once you know it, once you kind of know how it works, executing it isn't horribly bad. And then quick turn is kind of janky. You just kind of need to get good walls. If you get bad walls on this stage, then it makes it about 100 million times harder. But oh yeah, those walls just weren't quite good enough. Kind of the visual cue you want to use for quick turn. You want to be just past this triangle right there. I was a little far forward there, but we ended up okay. The triangle, you ideally want it to be coming down just as you pass it. That's kind of the visual cue that we usually use for that. But yeah, I actually got through that full threat relatively cleanly. It's kind of funny. You think about those 3 stages, Hierarchy, 8 bracelets, and quick turn, and you're like, which one am I least likely to die on? And it's probably quick turn, but that's actually the one we died to, so it's kind of funny.
Another one of the movement strats in Glock, made it look free, honestly, but Pistons, the first stage you saw in this world is another one of those where just the balancing act and the left turn there and just the whole movement of that entire stage is another benchmark of being like, okay, I can do that strat, and you're saving a good amount of time over the second hardest strat that a lot of runners use. It's funny that a lot of what feels like those benchmark strats are unfortunately kind of later in the run. So when you're kind of newer and implementing them into your run, it's not like, oh, I can get them out of the way early in the run. A lot of them are later when you're nervous, and Glock was saying, mom spaghetti, that whole thing. It's unfortunate, but you could say it builds character.
It definitely does. And even that's true of those benchmark stages. It's just true of some of the really hard stages that you just kind of gotta learn. A good example of that I just got past was Entangled Path, where the next fastest thing you can do on Entangled Path is 30 seconds slower.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of one that you gotta learn and you gotta get good at. So it can be a huge pain point for newer runners here. One of the longer pause strats in the run on Warp here, but we smoked it. That was really nice pausing. Just a little flick there at the end. Lets us get all the way to the goal. Always feels good to smash those 4+ frame pause strats, which you'll be seeing more of here in the tail end of the run. Warp is kind of the gatekeeper towards late game pausing, where you have Guillotine in World 9 is a 3-framer, and then in World 10 you got a bunch of stuff that's 4 or 5. So World 10 is where, we keep talking about how pausing under pressure is really hard, but oh my goodness. Playing World 10 when you're on world record nerves is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in video games. So
yeah, it cannot be. It's insane how hard it is when you're just absolutely on adrenaline, handshaking, and you have to do all these, frame perfect or 2-frame perfect inputs, over and over and over throughout the run. It's one of those things where when you're getting to that level, you kind of just accept that you're gonna lose runs to the nerves of your handshake into pausing. Nothing's guaranteed at all. Just because you have, less quote-unquote movement strats that, you know, you don't have to worry about getting your hand shaking. Pausing is just as dangerous for sure when you're nervous.
Definitely. Kind of like World 5 here. World 9 is nice. We keep talking about how hard World 10 is. We're not really talking about World 9 much. That's because World 9 is really easy, pretty much across the board. Guillotine is wedged right in the middle. It's a 3-frame pause strat, but there's a ton of those in the run, so, you know, it's not anything horrible. But World 9, I'm still, to this day, very grateful World 9 exists, because a lot of the time it feels like you spend World 9 charging up for World 10. You muster every fiber of your soul and, you know, get ready to play some of the most stressful monkey ball you've ever played. So it's nice to kind of have this loading dock of World 9 where you pretty much just get to chill, play these stages pretty quietly and calmly before... It's the calm before the storm, really, in the truest sense of the phrase.
Absolutely.
But the nice thing about World 10 for a marathon setting is not only is it really hard, and a lot of those stages are ones that people played a lot when they were kids, so they get some sick satisfaction of watching somebody beat them, you know. But it's also really flashy. World 10 has some crazy long stages that you just completely ignore. You'll see that on Gimmick and on Labyrinth and on Postmodern and on Invisible. Just really long, almost maze-like stages that the pause strats let us basically completely ignore, which is kind of
Yeah.
It's World 9 here going pretty swimmingly. I got through Guillotine with no problems. Another one of the kind of hallmark pause strats where you just get whacked straight into the goal. Didn't really call much attention to it when it was happening, but just kind of one of those classics.
Yeah, if you've seen a Monkey Ball 2 run at a marathon before, you definitely recognize that one. That's been around for a long time.
Yeah, that pause strat I think is cool, kind of on a fundamental level, because it's like, you know, somebody was just thinking, like, what if we could just get hit by the paddle straight in the goal? And then they found a way to make it happen, which is awesome. Anyway, yeah, this World 9 went super cleanly. No deaths, no major mistakes. And we will be cruising into World 10 here. I'm stealing my nerves because there's some really, really tricky stuff. It's funny because you start World 10 with training, which is like a nothing level, and then from there on, it's just like hard strat after hard strat after hard strat.
Yeah.
Very little rest. So you really are training, I guess. Gimmick. Honestly, I think Gimmick's probably the hardest thing in World 10, which is nice that it's at the front, but it's not like you can calm down after you hit it. But I think this is probably the hardest pause strat in World 10.
And it's a huge momentum builder too, because it's one of those things when you're, you know, running at a high level that once you nail it, you just kind of have this like confidence about you to like, okay, I got Gimmick, we're past it. I did the pausing when I'm already feeling the nerves, like I can do this. But it's this very slippery slope if you mess up like even the first frame of Gimmick and you have to retry. It's a mental gymnasium up in your brain just trying to be like, okay, it's cool, you know what I mean? So it's always a huge relief when you get it first try, just being like, okay, confidence builder, let's do this.
Yep, no doubt. I have said many times about this game and about World 10 in particular that good World 10s are made on Gimmick, and they are broken on Gimmick as well. When you just nail Gimmick, as I did, which I'm really stoked about, if you just nail Gimmick, then you got nothing to worry about a lot of the time. It shows that you're ready, you know? Like, actually, in my current PB, which is tied world record, I hit Gimmick perfectly in that run and immediately said after I cleared the stage, I'm getting this. And I did, so that was cool. Here on Labyrinth, another pretty long one. Gonna be 4 frames, and then a pretty finicky ending adjustment here. We got through it nice and clean. Like I said, no break, no rest. Right into Postmodern, which is another 4-frame strat where you're basically skipping an entire level. And the punches don't stop coming here in World 10, but I'm smoking them right now, which I'm really happy about. I'm playing pretty solidly here in World 10. Only 3 stages to go. Obviously, time to whoever is going to hit my timer. It's going to be after we go through the goal tape on 10:10. Here on Revolution, we just do 1 frame to get on this wall, and then it's going to be a really tricky kind of upside down adjust to enter that goal from the bottom as the stage is turning. It's really, really weird, but I make it happen.
Yeah, Glock's just talking through this, but World 10 is unbelievably hard. So the fact that he's just killing it, kind of just casually commentating it, is just a testament to his skill in this game and experience.
Yeah, actually, I kind of pwned World 10. I'll be honest.
Killed it.
Time got kind of owned. Created by is also really tricky. It's actually just a fully pauseless strat, just pure movement. You would love if the last stage of the run was easy, but this is definitely not. And let's see here, and we got it. So that's time, and that's the end of the run. That's Super Monkey Ball 2 story mode all levels. 100 levels of non-stop, intense Monkey Ball action, except for, World 1 and World 9. Those are a little sleepy at times, but yeah, there you go. Some really high-octane pause strats, some tough movement strats, and that's pretty much it for Monkey Ball 2. Aylis, thank you so much for hopping on co-commentary. Appreciate having you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and obviously shout out to SEGATHON for having me and having Monkey Ball in general. I know that Helix just played, I just played. I know Ike is up next with Kaizo Monkey Ball, which is one of my favorite runs ever. And then after that, Peas is playing Banana Blitz HD. So pretty awesome Monkey Ball block that we have put together here. I'm thankful to be a part of it. And one thing I wanted to shout out actually before I go is that there's currently a tournament for this game happening that I'm hosting. It's an individual level speedrun tournament where two players go head to head to beat a level as fast as they can. And that's happening over at twitch.tv/monkeyballspeedruns. So if you like what you see and you want to see more kind of exciting Monkey Ball stuff, then consider throwing a follow over there at Monkey Ball Speedruns, and maybe you can catch a match or two. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much for having me, SEGATHON. Thank you so much, A-List. And I hope you guys are excited for Kaizo Monkey Ball. It's going to be awesome.